Bodybuilding broke into the mainstream during the sport's so-called golden era. A time when icons like Frank Zane, Lee Haney, and Arnold Schwarzenegger competed on the Olympia stage with aesthetically minded physiques that put a premium on size, symmetry, and a certain grace and fluidity. That was all well and good for the 60s, 70s and 80s, but the 90s belonged to the mass monsters. The era of mass monsters began with the rise of Dorian Yates, whose hulking frame led to an Olympia dynasty in the early 90s, coming right after that of Lee Haney, one of the most aesthetic of all the classic Golden Age competitors. It was a changing of the guard for the entire world of bodybuilding, where pleasing aesthetic gave way to jaw-dropping size. And if you wanted to win, you needed plenty of mass to go around.
And then along came Dorian Yates from England, who won Mr. Olympia 6 times and just brought a whole new standard of hardness and freakiness. And, to me, the golden age of bodybuilding was the 90s.
Dorian Yates was able to dominate bodybuilding in the 90s because he was bigger and thicker than anybody else.
The evolution of bodybuilding changed when Dorian came into the scene, because he was one of the first bodybuilders to compete at like 260, 265. So he sent this like freakiness to the sport.
It was a little bit hard, and also it's a barrier to get over. Could it really be me? Could I be the best in the world at my chosen sport? There was that barrier, and then eventually I got over that. Like, why the hell not? There's got to be somebody, and I don't think anyone's training harder than me. And I always had that inside of me, like I don't think anyone could have done anymore. So that gives you a lot of strength.
Hailing from the north of the border, Paul Dillett made his mark on the scene during the early 90s with a mammoth frame that was emblematic of a bodybuilding generation that seemingly grew wider every year. In addition to his size, which was almost incomparable, his stage presence was further punctuated by his freakish vascularity, which added a frightening intensity to his physique. Marcus Rule was never the judge's favorite, but he was nothing if he not victorious in his quest to put on as much mass as possible. The German bodybuilder was a crowd pleaser over the course of his career, and rightfully so. His 280-pound frame was a sight to behold, and considering he weighted around 120 pounds when he first started lifting.
When I remember for 2 years I won the German championship and now I say we're the best bodybuilder that the world was on one stage.
Well, first of all, Ronnie was he was kind of like he was breaking through from where we were in size, and all of a sudden he became kind of a whole new dimension. You know, there was like just lumps and mass as far as size and proportion that you can go. And I think that he broke through that, and since then a lot of the guys have broken through that.
It was the beginning of the end for me and every other bodybuilder, because the guy went on to win the Russian Grand Prix show, and I never beat him. Nobody else never beat him since. And he went on to be an 8-time Mr. Olympia, one of the greatest bodybuilders ever of all time, man. But
yeah, standing behind him like, God dang. And here he is doing a crab pose, and his back striated from top to bottom, his glutes, and I'm thinking to myself, what are they missing with him? He looks better than I do.
He may never have won an Olympia, but Nasser El Sonbaty took to bodybuilding's most prestigious stage 9 times between 1994 to 2002. Victor Richard has been known around the world for having one of the biggest bodybuilding physique to have walked on the stage in the 90s. Victor went to win his pro card in Nigeria, but he didn't go on to compete in Mr. Olympia as many hoped he would. There was a lot of mystery and uncertainty that surrounded his entry to the IFBB competition.